Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Friends over here, if you can't see the screen, you can just squeeze over to the front. First of all, I would like to say thank you to be here and talk about this topic today because this is a little bit of Windows issue topic over here. So I believe you might be interested in this topic. So today I would like to talk about this issue and also you can share from your experience. So how do we migrate the .NET singleton pattern? We migrate that into the .NET Core microservice architecture. This I'm gonna the words I'm gonna use a little bit high level. I'd like to make a self introduction. My name is Hongxi. In the past few years, I was working for some foreign companies. First of all, I worked for Oracle's, then Citrix. I was a consultant for the cloud relative service. Then after that, I came out and do startup. I'm in charge of product and technologies. So today I would like to talk about during the past few years we have offered some consultant service for our customers, and these are real examples. This customer, they're based in Shenzhen. I'm not going to tell who they are, but they are the top 500 ICT enterprise. You might be able to guess who they are. So we name this project as Project S. This is one of the top ICT enterprise in China. One of their core business is that they do training service. You know that they have boxes and equipments. You need to do an on-site equipment training if you're in this field. And after 2011, we have this cloud technology that introduced in. For instance, like this VR services, so we can control that remotely. This system was planned in the 2010, and we introduced this in the 2011. We have a cooperation between us and another company from abroad. Our original thought was quite easy, that this is a system just for training for our enterprises, just within our enterprises, because as a consultant, our company, Citrix, we are highly collaborating with Microsoft. And our customers, they do not care what kind of language do we use, they just want the product. So the first version, we found our engineers and coders with .NET framework. They have this kind of strong background. During that time, we don't talk about these microservices. During that time, we just have MVCs. So we just introduced our MVP, and so that was quite a good development during that time. During our first stage of delivery, we have only around 3,000 shifts, and then it started to rise again. So it was quite successful from the business side. So it's not just the interior training within the company's platform. We would like to transform our product into a product that can be sold on the market. For instance, this training, these themes can be customized and can be sold out to the market. So this needs some change. And that needs the transformation of IT. For instance, it used to be a LAN network. And how do we transfer that LAN network into a network that can outbound? In order to secure the experience of our customers, we need to have a global coverage service. How do we ensure that? It's one of the main questions. And also we need to consider how can this application and framework be adaptable to all our smart devices. The IT information technology had made sure that our product can be used in one environment. But what about the others? So after running this project for several years, there are challenges that we need to face. First of all, the development of our system is just like the yellow line over here. That's the development of our system. However, our business development is fluctuating and it's rising significantly. So the requirements is getting harder to be fulfilled. For instance, they are starting to ask us to launch a new version each month. But with our capability, we can only offer launch each version within maybe 1.5 or 2 months. So why that pace of the IT cannot catch up with our business? This is the difficulties that we need to conquer. And second is that our customers worry about that in the first phase. When we're choosing a framework and architecture, we choose .NET or Windows. But in 2013, 2014, the new CEO of Microsoft has been in the office. Then our customers, they started to worry that the C# language might come to an end. So what about the future? So when we first established our business system, maybe we use Linux, we use Java, MySQL. But when they look into their own system, we're still running .NET framework in Windows. Then our customers started to worry because this might not be the right path to choose because this is so old and traditional. And how can they adapt into modern technology? So that's the second point. The third phase is about the Devops. It's a singleton architecture in which you use all these different environments based on cloud servers, including test environments, SAT, UAT environments, and production environments. And for the production environment, we have private cloud and public cloud. So when we need to make changes, it's so difficult for us. For instance, we spend whole night to fix the changes, but then it becomes useless, so we need to change it back. So this is all pressure. So IT had checked our model, but the development of business is very hard to fulfill from the IT's perspective. Because the variables are so high, and how can we be agility enough to catch it up? Because if some mistake happens, then our system might crash. Within the mid-2016, our team, as a consultant, we try to help our customers trying to fix the system's problem. And we have made some research, and people report a lot of issues and problems. It's quite technical. For instance, coding, and their needs cannot be fulfilled, and all these sort of different issues. But we can break it up like this graph. Half of them is about the IT technology, and the other is about the architecture, the management, the procedures. So when you ask, what requirements do you have? If you ask this question to your customer, then you can see this graph over here. For instance, they ask for a more powerful systems. Others say OA, and we want OA in our system. We need to have good customer experience and need to be fast. We need to support all different types of devices. And also our service need to be very broad. We can offer different areas with different service to cover our business around the globe. If they have some specific requirements, for instance, like Romania, within our system, we'll take that as a red line country because we need to have specific requirements for that. For instance, if a country from European Union, they decided to drop out from the European Union, then all the legislative rules and other IT devices, the requirements can be different. Even the hardware devices, for instance, our metrics and our servers from London, we need to move them out from London to other places. This can all be the cases. So we can classify it into two different scenarios. First of all is that we need to have a fast publishing. We need to have a new updated versions. From IT's perspective, we need to be very agile to respond to our business development. And the second phase, the second classification is our clouds need to be easy to use. So we have these two different type of data chain. That is, we need to fast development in IT to co-op with our operation. And second, we need to have a good service. That means we need to have a good cloud. We can lower our costs and provide a broader service. So this is our thoughts. First of all, we might have this waterfall mode. Then we need to transform that into Devops. So this is a transformation of thoughts and from the managing perspective. The second one is if we talk about .NET framework, then we can transfer that from the monolithic and to a microservice structure. And the third one is this .NET framework. You might know this has been many years of development and it's developed quite well. But during the recent few years after the new CEO's in his office, then we have transformed that into .NET Core development. We focus on that because since the 1.1 version came out, we've been focused on it. And after the 2.0 version came out, we started to use it, and the third version is about to be introduced. Later, we will be introduced this area as well. And in the era of microservices, we discovered that traditional VM cannot support our microservices from IT's perspective. So then we need to introduce container. And how do we manage containers? This is especially difficult when we are migrating our .NET framework to .NET Core. We need to think about how do we support that? How do we migrate that? Then the cloud. In the very first beginning, it has developed from a single cloud to a multiple cloud system. It's not a hybrid cloud system, but a multi-cloud system. Because you have these distributed database systems. And also need to co-op with, for instance, you have your own cloud or DB system, and you have different cloud provider from overseas. Then we want this whole architecture from a Windows-based infra to a Linux open source infrastructure. We know that Windows is quite good, but within the IT industry, people will operate Linux more easily. Because if you operate Linux, you'll find one interesting fact that is, if you're trying to buy an Azure, the cost is so high, and it's even higher than the same configuration. If you compare that with Linux, the cost is higher. The next is the exclusive, from exclusive to a open and shareable DB. In the past few years, we rely on SQL, Microservice, then now we're trying to transfer that into MySQL. We've mentioned a lot of points. This is all from the technological perspective. But frankly, if we would like to make our service agility enough to co-op with the business development, this is not enough, because technology and techniques is only one side of it. we know that there are human facts in there. There are managing elements in there. There are so many different issues and problems we need to solve. It's not only about technology. So how do we solve these issues and problems? So a architecture we developed can only reflect the app itself. For instance, you have this many suppliers and many business come into using this app, but it might be adaptable for all of them because each one of them have their own requirements. So during consulting, we would give our customers advice to think about other issues and facts, not only about technologies. And finally, they will be able to realize the fast delivery of new version of our software. If you can get something from my speech, I would like you to remember that it's important to use technological perspective to look into all the issues, but it is not enough if you just only look in it from the technological perspective. So we would like to use the DevOps architecture plus container plus microservices can be a better solution for the fast developing of our business. There are some core values in DevOps. First of all, that is the value needs to be flow fast. If the update of our new version, the delivery of our requirements. For instance, in the past, we can deliver a new version monthly based on monthly, but nowadays maybe daily. If you're interested in DevOps and you've already read a lot of articles online, I've heard many people talked about DevOps, but personally, I think that these are only theories and it's easy. They're just too easy. So in the community, we have a way that through games, we can make you understand the core value of DevOps. You've read about DevOps and you might read a book called Phoenix Project. You know that there's a sandbox game over here. So through this game, you can understand that your problem in the DevOps can be realized. So people ask me, how do we realize DevOps? And what are the core issues in DevOps? There's no one fixed answer to it. It's like a doctor, it's like a patient seeing a doctor. There are many issues that a doctor needs to conquer, for instance, because all the patients are case by case. So based on this big background, we have introduced this structure for microservices. So the structure is DevOps plus container and architecture and microservice. So how does it support our transformation? And what are the technological methods to use? If you look at the upper left, you can see the Miss Portal and Miss Backstage. What does it become that? How do we separate that? That is based on the team that developed this system, the architecture. It's based on the suppliers. There are too many different APIs for different suppliers, so it is a very low efficiency when communicating. This is the more traditional method that we used to use. And now we need to break it up, scatter around. We need to see from a service perspective, from a personnel's perspective, there are a lot of advantages in it. And all these advantages support that the DevOps is able to transfer its values around. And we've mentioned that DevOps can support our value, and for our technological perspective, we have microservice. But when choosing language, how do we choose? We have referenced the .NET Core open source language. We all know that .NET Core is supported by Microsoft. It's an open source project. This statistic is made by Zhang Shanyou. A huge portion of developers nowadays are using .NET Core. It's around 44%. And the enterprise using it is the back end of Internet Enterprise. And basically, people are using Visual Studio, and the other one is VS Code, which stands 26%. Some people might think that this thing is not ready, but as a matter of fact, it is ready. We all know that some of our friends has already used .NET Core in their production environment. There are some points that you need to consider. For instance, when we are doing some transformation of microservices, what kind of perspective do we look into it? And what are the difficulties when migrating .NET Core? How do we support this platform through container technology? I would like to share my opinion and experience through these three perspectives. This is quite complicated chart over here, but you do not need to look into it. When we are facing a already exist architecture system and we're trying to migrating that system into microservice, one difficulty of the question that we need to ask ourselves is, where do we start? From the outer services, or do we lay our hands firstly into the core services? After talking with my friends, we chat around, and we haven't reached a fixed answer yet. When we look into this chart, when we're trying to do the migration, we might firstly consider to lay our hands on the outer services, because this does not need to make too much changes in the core value. But then we have other thoughts on that. We try to make the transformation from our core business areas and the VR services over. Because through different scenarios and scenes, and for instance in the financial industry, they are considering different points. I know that some financial industry companies, they think that we can keep updating our architecture. But if they want to bring out a new service, they want to develop a new service, they just ask a totally new team to lay their hands. Some technological issues, because of time limits, I will not dig into it. I just want to throw out some focus point you need to know. There are some issues here. For instance, the .NET Code and .NET Code and .NET Core, can they be adaptable? Because some of our business, the logic might be collaborating with Microsoft .NET B, and the .NET Core cannot support that. For instance, for DB, in the past we use SQL Server, but now should we transfer that into MySQL? In this project, the technology we have gradually migrate our data from SQL Server to MySQL. But you do not have to do this because this is a case-by-case scenario. And facing new language as a developer, we worry because we need considering, do we need to learn a lot of new things for microservices? But in the real world, we think that this worries too much, because during the process of transformation, our Devops personnel can easily and smoothly have that transformation when facing new languages. When we're setting up a new team, do we use the team members we already exist Do you just train them, or do we form a new team? Based on our experience, we have hired some new coders to join our team, and still we use our old team members because they have their own advantages. And this is the optimization we have adopted. So we have formed a new team, and also we use some team members we already hired. So this is a combination based on the consideration on different perspectives. You need to have a mixture of both new and old teammates. Also, we think that based on the real situation, the migration from .NET to .NET Core, if we do this thing gradually, then there will be some time that the data in there will be exist parallelly. But also it creates a problem that is virtual services logic will be exist in the .NET framework. It will still be in there. And there are some customers told me that we can just set up a new project to do our microservice. This is a way, but this take more time. So speaking from microservice perspective, we cannot just use VMs to take all the burdens and service. So we use some container technology, automation technology, and I'll not dig into it. So I'll not go into the Kubernetes and containers. Also, if you know that Microsoft has invested a lot in containment, for instance, the CQ Server 2016, it supports the containers and invested a lot in Kubernetes as well. Microsoft has been talking about that Microsoft loves Linux and it loves Docker. There are some technical challenges for containers. In the past, people think that containers are only solving the questions of DevOps. And how do you also consider the environment in the container? Because we used to think that the containers can bring down the pressure in DevOps, but sometimes it's actually increasing the pressure because there are issues to be solved in the containers as well. Because some developers, they are not familiar with the Kubernetes, who have some outsourced resources. They are just juniors developers. And they're not familiar with Linux. They're not familiar with the industry. So the container can cause some issues for them. And also we have collaborated with our customers and see how do we try to solve this issue. We know that we have all these different clouds, AWS, Huawei Cloud. And how do we deliver this very complicated microservices into a very complicated cloud environment? So we have realized this development environment, for instance, project A into a certain service, project B into another service. So this is quite complicated, as you can see. And there are some regulations that we need to collaborate with. We need to fulfill the needs of these legislative issues domestically. And these are the issues that we need to consider. And also service and service, sometimes we need to put it simultaneously in Huawei Cloud or AWS. If failures or errors happen, our customers can just switch into the different clouds. We know that the Kubernetes is one of our focus and is focused on the collaboration management. You might be heard about the Federation project. It's now hold. It's in this initial phase, and we have made this logic management system, and the final mode is that after the modification of our X project, we have a 11 .NET Core microservice and 6 .NET Framework service. And through Kubernetes allegation, we have put them all together into one cluster, and .NET Framework into another container based on the Windows 2016 container.
So now we have realized these multi-cloud architecture and let the developers and all the people involved in the circles to better utilize these architecture. So also from the actual results, because it's still an ongoing project, but now we have already achieved the 17 microservices modules, and most of the services have already been transferred, and we're using the MySQL database, and we use HTTP RESTful agreement and use Docker as the carrier technology. So now I want to say that we have an analysis. We use these Devops in combination with Docker and microservices. So we actually realized the modularization of the microservices, whether it's for these projects specifically or for other projects, we can actually use those microservices and apply them to other projects. And now we have a more clear picture in terms of our services. So if you have a new team member, so you can only just you can just tell him that you can focus on the certain perspective and focus on the microservice. So it's easier for the new team member to get involved. And now we have a platform that can support multiple systems. And with these microservices, we can make it more convenient for us to put it into practice. So we can actually gradually optimize all the services. We have a lot of microservices, and to try it with new technologies and use it and apply it on more services. So I think you have these gradual process, and this is also an advantage provided to us by the microservice. So actually, these kind of like a design blueprint, so it can be applied into this process, which was difficult to realize in the monolithic architect. So this is all I have to say. So I used the last minute to briefly go through my talk. So I think if you can learn from something from my talk today, the first thing is that we know that we have a lot of legacy architects from the .NET framework. I mean, just as I emphasized, technology is only a part of the picture. We still have to consider a lot more parts. So I think the .NET Core plus microservices is a great option, and I think it's ready to put into actual use. So whether it's microservice for .NET Core or other services, it's difficult to use with VM. You actually have to use Kubernetes and container, but if you use those technology, you face new challenges. It's difficult to actually make all the developers understand what this was about, but we need to take full advantage of this container architect. You need to make the container easier to use, to make it more clear. So maybe with microservices, it's going to get more complicated. You will have several hundreds of microservices, and you have several cloud platforms, and also you need to think about the deliveries and how to make it as clear and as simple possible. So at the first place, we might started to think about, okay, we only need the microservices. But once you start to do it, you realize you need to think about a lot of things in the project to make sure it is going to be a success. So this is my WeChat. So because of the time limit, you can scan the QR code and add me on WeChat, and we can discuss later. But because of the time limit, we don't have the time for Q&A session. So if you have any question, you can ask me on the WeChat, and we can share our insights together. So thank you.